deterioration of our current public school systems, those that are majority black and brown, that serve majority black and brown children, their deterioration is not by mistake. And I'm not talking about some man behind the curtain type conspiracy. I'm talking about the way the system is designed to operate. It is intentional to withhold certain information about people, about their heritage, their lineage, about their experiences prior to the transatlantic slave trade, the language that we use. And I do this intentionally with my high school students. With all my students, I ask them, where do slaves come from? And of course they all say Africa. And I explain to them that slaves don't come from Africa. Africans come from Africa. And when you begin to change the language and you explain to them that they were enslaved, you rehumanize the narrative. They were enslaved and they were prisoners of war. And because there was a deliberate war on the African continent, right? Mostly by Europeans, but not just by Europeans, by Arabs, by other Semitic people. You know what I mean? There's been a war on the natural resources and the people of Africa for centuries. That war has not ended, right? In no way, shape, or form. One of the strongest pillars of white supremacy is the education system. And there are no aspects of white supremacy that will operate in any way that's detrimental to the system. So I tell my students all the time there are two types of education. The education that you receive in school and the one that you give yourself. So let's be clear. We live in a capitalist society. The greatest capital that's ever been used throughout the history of this country were enslaved Africans. So when, and again, it's important to illustrate, all white folks didn't own slaves, right? There were a select few wealthy white landowners, planters, things of that nature, in the North and in the South, who owned slaves. There were many more white folk who were poor that may only wanted, you know, but, and they were tricked into becoming white or assuming whiteness. There were legitimate laws created to separate those two groups of people. And it's worked, and it continues to work. So when those few folks no longer owned us, they still had to own something relative to us, right? Whatever it was we could produce. And if you ask me, of course I'm an image maker, I'm an artist. Our greatest creation is our art. And our art has been used throughout our experience here as an attempt, for the most part, to validate our humanity. Up until, I would say, mid-60s, early 70s, when the Black Power and Black Arts movement came into play, there seemed to be a concerted effort to no longer seek validation from white sources, right, white establishments. How do we own it? How do we control our own narratives? It's going to be very difficult again, because it's, I believe, our #1 commodity, and we don't own much, right? Capitalism is about ownership, and we have not necessarily, en masse, come to understand that. Us, we've become very good workers, very good proletariats, very good. If we make it to the management level, that to us that was the promised land. If someone wore the white hat, the white hard hat, on the plant floor, then you know we got a black guy that's a foreman. You know what I mean? But not many of us have actually understood ownership, especially in our artists. It is almost formulated in a way where we produce what we don't own. We produce what we don't own. So if you talk about music, if you use visual art, theater, whatever, So if we produce some artwork, yet someone else owns it, whose work is it? You know what I mean? That's legalized slavery. That's modern day slavery, right? Who picked the cotton? So we still picking the cotton, the tobacco, the rice, the sugar cane, and other folks still reaping the benefits.